Hello everyone and welcome to this week's edition of the Promo Republic Agency and Freelancer Academy webinar series. Today is chapter 12 and today we're going to be discussing 5 ways that you can double your agency's revenue in 2019 and beyond. Now this week's webinar is going to be a little bit different from usual. These webinars are always live and always very interactive. Now, if you tune into these before, you'll know that for this week and for next week, unfortunately, I am going to be away. I'm away from all internet and technology access for a little over 10 days. But I wanted to make sure that we still continued to provide you with a ton of useful, informative, and engaging content that's going to help you take your business forward. So, unfortunately, this week's webinar is not live. You probably won't be able to engage in a chat box or anything like that, but that doesn't mean that the webinar won't be super powerful. It just means that it's probably going to be a little bit shorter and I won't be able to answer any of your questions live. So now we've got that out of the way, let's get into things. Let's get straight on and get involved with this webinar. And once again, I just want to say thank you for joining. If you are new to this webinar series, I would also recommend actually that you go back and take a look at the previous webinars we've put together. So before this episode, there have been 11 other extremely useful and insightful webinars, and you can view all of those either on the Promo Republic YouTube channel or on the Agency and Freelancer Hub on the Promo Republic website. So I really encourage you to do that. And as I said, today is not live, but we will be back to our typical live program in a couple of weeks' time. Okay, so this is today's agenda. We're going to keep this one fairly short and sweet, but extremely useful for you all, as I want to help you increase your revenue moving into 2019. So we'll touch briefly on pricing, then we'll talk about a couple of new trends for 2019, and then we will look at 5 ways I feel you can double your revenue or increase your revenue moving forward. Excuse me. Okay, so let's talk pricing. Because pricing is extremely important and is often overlooked. So I want to start with a question, and that question is this: how often have you thought about your pricing this year? Just think about that for a second. How many times over 2018 have you thought about your pricing? If you answered this a little bit, or maybe you said not at all, then I have both good and bad news for you. So we'll start with the bad news, and that is that you are definitely leaving money on the table if you haven't considered your pricing this year. But don't worry, there is still good news, as I promised you. Pricing is and will be a huge lever for your business, and even small, tiny little improvements that you can make to your pricing will pay dividends often very quickly. We actually had a full webinar all about pricing in episode 5 of the Agency and Freelancer Academy webinar series. So I'd really recommend that you go back and check that one out already if you haven't seen it. But I thought today, before we start talking about ways that you can drive additional revenue in 2019, it's key to talk about pricing. And rather than do an entire recap of that webinar, because it was, I think, about an hour long, I'm just going to do a quick recap of a couple of the key points that we discussed in that webinar. Because as I said, it's absolutely key to think about your pricing before you start thinking about how you can increase your revenue moving forward. So let's get started. I wanted to cover a couple of common pricing mistakes. And one thing I want to say here is that you should not be treating pricing as an afterthought. It should be a core competency. We spend so much time thinking about sales and marketing for our businesses. Why is pricing not thought about as much? Make sure you frequently revisit your pricing strategy. So these are 4 common pricing mistakes. As I said to you, we covered these in a lot more depth in the in the pricing webinar. But these 4 common mistakes are: people often set and forget their pricing. They don't experiment. They either give too many or too few options. And we'll talk about discounts too. So set and forget, we kind of basically covered that one already. Most people just set their pricing, completely forget about it, and don't frequently look at it and don't frequently adjust it. So I want to encourage you to do that. So when was the last time you experimented with your pricing? I know, unfortunately today there is no live chat, so I can't wait for your responses to this. So you'll just have to either think aloud or write this down. But when was that last time you experimented with your pricing? I'm imagining for most of you it's probably a long time ago. So I'd like to say you should introduce some different packages maybe, or you could test with like switching up your price points, but always test these things. Even companies that regularly check in on their pricing often don't actually experiment with that pricing then to figure out exactly what the customers want, what they're willing to pay. So experiment with your pricing is really important. Then the too many or too few options. So too many options can confuse your buyers and give them too many reasons to become even more picky. But too few options can also have a negative effect because it can only capture certain points along the demand curve and you might be underselling yourself. I'd really recommend that you realign the number of tiers you have to be right in what we call the Goldilocks zone. And that is a zone where there are not too many and not too few. And how do you know when you have too many services or too many pricing options? And how do you know when you have too few? Well, the only way you can find that out is through your experimentation and through your buyer persona research that you should have done previously. Okay, discounts. Discounts is a topic that I could talk about for hours and hours and hours. Like, I have a lot of interesting discussions with other business owners about discounts, and I feel very strongly about when you should offer them or how you should offer them. But how many of you offer discounts? Again, I know this isn't live, so I won't be able to see your answers, but how many of you offer a discount? Think about that for a second. And how do you position your discounts? I want to say that once you condition your customers to expect discounts, this conditioning is extremely difficult to reverse. So one key thing with discounts is that if you must or feel like you really have to offer a discount, make sure that you and your business are seeing some kind of benefit in return for that discount. This is something we discussed in depth on the pricing webinar, but I never offer someone a discount unless I receive something in return, because if I'm giving away revenue to a potential customer, then the only way and the only time I would do that is if I win from that scenario. So an example for me is that I will only give a discount if someone pays in advance in full for my services. So for example, my pricing is a monthly retainer, and I always take payment upfront before starting any work. But what I can do is if someone wants a discount or asks for a discount, I'm prepared to offer them a very slight discount, no more than 5 or 10%, in return that they pay the first 3 months of the retainer in full upfront, for example. So that way they win because they get a cheaper price, but I also win in terms of cash flow because I get a significant increase in cash or revenue into my business. So when I say that if you must offer a discount, make sure you benefit in return, that is one of those examples of how you can benefit in return. Okay. So now let's get into some new trends for 2019. So we'll actually be covering the trends of 2019 in a lot more depth in next week's webinar. So if you want to learn about 5 key marketing trends in 2019 that you can't afford to miss out on, please tune into next week's webinar at the same time next Thursday. But I wanted to include a couple in this webinar just to give you some ideas about potential additional services that you could offer when it comes to talking about how we can double or more than double your revenue moving into next year. Okay, so the first one, messenger marketing. Now, if there's one thing that has always been true in business is that companies tend to gravitate, or not just companies and people actually tend to gravitate towards the communication channels that consumers are already using, right? It just makes sense. So back in the time when people communicated through handwritten letters, direct mail was then born. When phones became common, telemarketing became more common. When the rise of email came about, that led to the rise of email marketing platforms. So today, most people are communicating on messenger apps. Think about Facebook Messenger in particular, WhatsApp, any of these other messaging channels and platforms that are available. And over the past few years, I think it's completely fair to say that the popularity of these platforms has absolutely skyrocketed. And what you see on the screen on the left is proof and a curve that shows that messaging apps have now surpassed social networks in terms of monthly active users and are going to continue to do so. And the steepness of that curve should also tell you something, that messaging apps like clearly have a huge appeal. And I think that's because they're just simply so easy and intuitive that it would be crazy for people not to use them, right? And I personally don't feel like this trend is stopping anytime soon. What you see on the right-hand side is a brand where they're utilizing Messenger chatbots to sell some sneakers or some trainers. And so many businesses are doing this now. And as I said, in next week's webinar, we're going to go into a lot more depth around trends, because we'll be discussing 5 key trends for 2019. And messenger marketing, conversational commerce, if you want to call it that, is going to be covered. And we'll cover that in a lot more depth. But just for the purpose of today's webinar about increasing revenue, I wanted to share a couple of ideas around big trends for 2019 and current trends that you can help to leverage the revenue that we'll be creating next year, because we'll be talking about upselling services later on into this webinar. And so the second one is Instagram, right? Instagram is super important. I know this is nothing new, but Instagram is definitely one of the most important and most powerful marketing channels of our time, for sure. So it's great for content marketing and paid advertising, but at the same time, it's also great for communication and customer services. It has the capacity to drive great engagement and better than average return on investment for us as marketers or agency owners or brands. Instagram has been growing like super fast ever since it was first launched 7 or 8 years ago. And you can see from the graph on the left-hand side that the network reached that milestone of 1 billion monthly active users back in June of this year. And there are also more than 4 million likes every single day on the platform. And each image on that platform that gets posted gets an average of 23% more engagement than a post on Facebook. I just want to let that settle in for a moment. Each post on Instagram on average gets 23% more engagement than Facebook. So as a consequence, we need to constantly stay updated with all of Instagram's like latest developments and of course the trends that govern the platform. One thing about this platform though that I do have to say is content is absolutely king, and it's super important. Your clients moving forward into 2019 and beyond are going to be needing to rely on you even more heavily for better content, more engaging content, more quality content. And that's something that can also be key when we talk about ways that you can generate additional revenue in 2019. So let's get into this part of the webinar, because I know that's why most of you would have come here, is to learn 5 ways that you can double your revenue in 2019. And that's what we're going to discuss right now. So number 1, like I know this seems fairly obvious or fairly simple probably to a lot of you, but this is key, right? If you want to increase your revenue, when was the last time you increased your prices? That's a question to you. Again, today's webinar is not live, so I can't wait to see your answers, but I'm imagining that a lot of you here probably haven't changed your prices for a while, and that is understandable. A lot of us are scared or afraid to approach our current clients about increasing our pricing. We're worried that we may lose customers, etc. So when it comes to increasing your prices, like of course, if you increase your prices and you keep all of your clients, then you're going to make a significant amount more revenue. If you increase your prices and you lose a couple of clients, but all of your other clients accept it, then you're still going to make a significant amount of more revenue. And every new client that you bring on is going to be paying you more too. So when it comes to increasing your prices, I want you to think about a couple of key things. The first is that you need to think about your pricing model. So one great way to increase your prices is if you're currently charging hourly rates, I would really suggest, unless you totally have to, I would really suggest that you stop that immediately and instead switch to a value-based pricing mechanism. It often works better, it increases your profit rates, and will definitely increase your revenue this year. The next thing to say is that higher paying clients, in my experience, often take the same or sometimes actually less work than low paying clients. And it kind of seems a bit counterintuitive at first, but I've found my clients that pay me the most money are actually the easiest to work with as well. And I think that's because they're investing more money, they trust you, they see you as an expert potentially. I'm not sure, but that's just from my experience. And then the final thing is just don't be afraid. I know it's a scary thing to do, or it feels like a scary thing to do at first. It seems a bit counterintuitive, but just go for it. Like I think all of you heading into 2019, if you haven't increased your prices recently or in the last 6 to 12 months, I think it's something you should 100% consider and think about. Now, number 2, this one's a little bit different. This isn't some like hands-on marketing advice or some like growth hack or tip or trick, but this is something that has significantly changed the trajectory of my career over the last 12 months and will continue to do so. And that is finding a mentor or a number of mentors. So I would say that it's super easy for us to fall into that trap of like, hey, look, I'm on top of the world. I know everything there is to know. And that often comes with your first few tastes of success. It's even easier to feel too afraid or too proud to ask for help as well. If you're in a business rut, or maybe you're having trouble taking your business to the next level, or you just want to increase your revenue next year, which I know all of you do, I would really recommend that you reach out and connect with someone who can help, because chances are it will not only impact your business in ways that you never thought possible, but it will also make you a better person. I love to say that finding a mentor, they can often provide you with the cheat codes for success, right? If you find someone who has already been through everything that you're going through, that is a few steps ahead of you on the curve where you want to go, they know what works, they know what doesn't work, they can tell you and share their experience with you, and then you just kind of copy what they've shared, right? It makes sense, it works, and that's something that's been really powerful for me this year. And I was actually reading a statistic when I was putting together this webinar that said in 2012, so I know it was a little while ago, but in 2012, this company called Micro Mentor surveyed users of their platform, and they found out that those who received mentoring increased their revenue. Get this, right? They increased their revenue by an average of $47,000 or 106%. And those that didn't receive mentoring only increased their revenue over the year by an average of $6,500 or 14%. So those with mentors increased their revenue by over 106%, and those without only by 14%. So those numbers alone speak hugely to me, and hopefully they will to you. And I would really recommend that you spend some time. Like, for me, the best mentors haven't been people miles and miles ahead of me. They've been people that are like 2 or 3 steps ahead of me in terms of where I want to go, because then they're still very fresh. They still have all of the knowledge. They've still been in the trenches with us doing the work that we do. Okay, number 3. This one is really important. So reducing over-servicing. You can see some cool stats here on the screen, and I found these really interesting. 49% of agencies reported a profit loss of 11% or more due to over-servicing. So this is when you do more work than you agreed in your scope or in your proposal with your client. You're putting more time into the project than you expected. You are over-servicing them based on what they're paying you. So how do you improve this? Well, there are a few ways. You can train your employees and create processes that help to create an accurate project scope and manage the project to stay within those defined boundaries that you've set. So the way that you do that is through teaching them to ask the right kind of questions, or developing questioning guides for various types of projects, emphasizing using clear and detailed communication to prevent missteps. I think one thing that's really key with reducing over-servicing is you really just have to improve your project scoping. You have to get better at scoping out work and agreeing on costs and agreeing on pricing. Or one thing that you can also do that I recommend is always, when you're pricing something up, just add an extra like 5 or 10% just to cover any risk of that over-servicing. And I've also put on here to value your work, right? Because when you give your work away for free or at a reduced cost or a reduced price, you are then training your clients, and even worse, training your team members to actually devalue the work that you do. So it might only take you like an additional 2 or 3 hours to create that landing page or that banner ad. But that time and the resulting output is a value, and you should always treat it that way. If you do write off services, make sure that you highlight this to the client, showcasing the number of hours and the original value of that time on the invoice or monthly report. This also will help you with tracking any projects that go over budget. So if you are over servicing, like if for 1 month you do all these additional pages, landing pages, social media posts, etc., just track it and make your clients aware of that too, because they'll appreciate that more if they know you're working harder for them, but they'll also see, and you can make it clearer to them that you are over servicing them. Okay, number 4. Systemize even, that's a hard one to say, and scale your prospecting. So I would imagine probably 50-60% of you listening to this and watching this webinar right now are relying on referrals for most of your business, or most of your business is coming from referrals. And first of all, that is awesome. If you're getting business from referrals, that is great, like good on you. That means you're doing great work. But this webinar is about doubling our revenue next year. And in order to double your revenue, you have to double your outbound prospecting, and you have to really, really step things up. You have to stop relying on referrals and start focusing on other channels. So I always tell people, don't just focus on one channel. Don't just do cold email, or don't just do LinkedIn outreach or Upwork or whatever. Try and focus on multiple. This is the way that you'll double your revenue, is if you have scalable systems for prospecting across different platforms. And I always recommend to utilize automation tools to help you with this. You can use like cold email tools, you can use LinkedIn lead generation tools, and you can get virtual assistants prospecting for you. Like, one way that you are going to double your revenue next year is by doubling your output, right? Outflow equals inflow. The more people you're talking to, the more messages you're sending, the more people you're connecting with, the more work is going to come to you. It's just natural. So you want to find ways that you can systemize that and scale your prospecting. It's like really, really key and really important. Okay, and then the fifth and final point for how you're going to double your revenue next year is from upselling your current clients. Too few of you are doing this. I read this stat that said it is 68% more expensive to acquire $1 from someone that doesn't know you versus a current customer. So if you want to generate revenue from a current customer, it will be 68% cheaper than generating revenue from someone who doesn't know who you are. That is crazy. Yet none of us, or too few of us, are upselling our current clients. So I want you to think about what additional services can you offer your current clients that is going to add value to, or add even more value to their business. Maybe you could think about a couple of the trends we discussed earlier. So for example, we know that messenger marketing and conversational commerce is becoming huge. Can you build out a chatbot for one of your clients? That's a way to increase revenue. Can you, we talked about Instagram and how content is super important and becoming even more important. Can you create more content for them? Can you do like an additional content package for them or something like that? Just think about upselling your current clients. Like, if you have a client list, go through that client list, think about ways you can add additional revenue to their business, show them the ways that you can add additional revenue to their business, and then offer them more services. It just makes sense, and it will be 68% cheaper than acquiring a brand new client. So with that in mind, with like upsells in mind, I actually have a couple of ways that that Promo Republic itself and the Promo Republic kind of agency solution can help you out. So the first one is through intelligent ads. Like, Facebook ads are like a service that some of you may not be offering. If you're just doing social media management, you might not be doing Facebook ads. You might not be driving additional revenue for your clients through Facebook ads, right? And if you need to find like an outsourcing partner or a team to help you with that, at Promo Republic, for our agency clients, we offer an additional service. It costs a little bit extra each month, but it really is extremely, extremely affordable. And that is called intelligent ads. So you'll have a team that can deliver your ads to people who are more likely to take the certain actions and help make your social media ads ROI positive. You can upsell this onto your clients, and you can get the Promo Republic ads team running some ads for you and for your clients. So this is one way that you can upsell your clients without actually having to do any additional work. And this is for, as I said, is an additional value add for any of our agency customers. And then the second one is social media monitoring, or social monitoring by Promo Republic. So as we've said, that content is becoming even more important, and content has always been king and will continue to be king. The more time you're spending on social media for your clients, the more messages you're sending, the more posts you're creating, the more people you're going to have engaging with those posts. And engaging with posts means you then have to respond to these people, and that can take up a lot of time too. But before that, you have to actually find the posts, right? With social monitoring from Promo Republic, you are able to quickly discover all in one place, all in one dashboard across all the different social channels, what people are saying about your brand and your clients' brands, and detect sales opportunities. So you can react quickly to real-time mentions, comments, and reviews made about your products. This is awesome for, to be honest, any business, but especially local businesses, because there's the ability to see reviews coming through on here as well, which are key, right? So these are just two really quick kind of ways that, or quick upsells I could think of for you that you can implement immediately and offer to your clients immediately without having to do any additional work. You can just resell this onto them. With the social monitoring, you'd have to do a bit of work, of course, because you'd have to respond to these. But with these two packages and with the Promo Republic agency solution, like, there are tons of ways that you can save yourself time and generate more revenue for your clients. And if you want to find out about the agency solution, somewhere on the screen around this video, around this webinar, there will be a button where you can click and you can book onto a call with Valentin. And Valentin is the guy that will basically show you everything there is to offer with the Promo Republic agency solution, because as I've said a few times, there is a special agency focused solution which will definitely help you grow your businesses. So if you want to learn more about social monitoring, if you want to learn more about intelligent ads, somewhere on the screen there is a button where you can book onto a call with Valentin, and he will show you everything, show you how it works, show you what it looks like. So I just wanted to finish with this conclusion. What you can see here is a comparison table between the Promo Republic agency offering and a lot of the other tools on the market, right? And we actually did a calculation for a stereotypical kind of social media marketing agency, right? So someone that manages 30 social media accounts, they have a team of 5 team members and clients who would like access to a white labeled version of the tool so they can have approval workflow features in place. And it appeared that through choosing Promo Republic, they would save anywhere between $600 and $5,500 every single year just from choosing Promo Republic, because the pricing is extremely competitive. The feature set is incredible. And I genuinely believe if you're a social media marketing agency or you're anyone that offers social media marketing to a number of clients, in 2019, you need an agency-focused tool, and Promo Republic should definitely be the one that you use. So if you want to learn more about the agency solution, if you have some questions to ask, because unfortunately today's webinar is not live, so I can't answer them for you. But if you have any questions to ask, if you want to learn more about the platform, I really would recommend that you click the button that is on this screen somewhere, on this page somewhere, and book onto a call with Valentin, and he can walk you through everything that there is and answer any questions that you have. So with that, I want to finish. I want to say thank you for joining me today. Thank you for watching this webinar. I hope it was extremely useful for you. And make sure you tune in next week for the webinar about 5 key marketing trends in 2019 that you can't afford to miss out on. Thanks once again, and I will speak to you all next week.